I am so sick and tired of this narrative that has been regurgitated so many times on social media and in communities that don't know anything about South Africa and about its history. Before one more person says that South Africans are cowards, that South Africans are afraid of white people, and that South Africans just rolled over and accepted colonialism and apartheid, I need every single person to understand one thing and understand it very clearly. From 1659 until 1994, South Africans resisted generations after generation after generation. Not for 10 years, not for 50 years, not even for 100 years. 300 years of resistance. 300 years of resistance. So when someone who doesn't know our history comes onto the internet and tells us that South Africans are afraid of white people, I can never remain silent. I am tired of remaining silent because that statement doesn't just insult us, it insults every ancestor who fought, bled, suffered, and died so that I can sit here and speak today. Let me start from the beginning for all of you that think you know South Africa's history, but you know nothing. In 1652, the Dutch East India Company established a refreshment station in the Cape under Jan van Riebeeck. Within a few years, Dutch settlers began expanding beyond the land, and they went against what was originally negotiated with the Khoi communities. They started taking over grazing land and seized cattle, the very foundation that the Khoi people were living on. That was the Khoi people's wealth and society. So conflict became inevitable. So in 1659, just 7 years after the Dutch arrived, the first Khoi-Khoi-Dutch War began under the leadership of Doman, a Khoi leader who learned Dutch customs and understood exactly what the colonial expansion meant. The Khoi used guerrilla tactics, attacking livestock and supply lines. They resisted because they refused to surrender their land without a fight. The Dutch eventually prevailed through superior firearms and their fortified settlements. But the Khoi never simply accepted colonial rule. They fought. Resistance continued. Between 1673 and 1677 came the Second Khoi Dutch War, led by Chief Gonema. Once again, indigenous communities fought the Dutch, and there was a prolonged conflict. South Africans resisted from the very beginning. From the moment that the settlers touched our soil, we resisted. Then came one of the longest African anti-colonial struggles in African history, the Cape Frontier Wars, also known as the Xhosa Wars. From 1779 to 1879, 100 years, there were 9 separate wars between the Xhosa nation and the colonial governments. Think about that. 100 years. Fathers fought. Their sons fought. Their grandsons fought. Entire generations were born into resistance. Leaders such as Ndlambe, Yinzaka Kawuta, Maqoma, and Sandile became symbols of people refusing to surrender their land. The British Empire was one of the most powerful empires in the world, yet it took them a century of repeated wars to finally subdue the Xhosa people. 100 years. That can never be cowardice. That is endurance. That is courage. And those are our ancestors. Then came the Zulu kingdom. People around the world know the name Shaka Zulu, but they often forget what happened after him. In 1879, Britain invaded Zululand, believing that one of the greatest empires on the earth would quickly defeat Zulu kingdom. But they had something else coming for them. Instead, on the 22nd of January 1879, the Battle of Isandlwana, approximately 20,000 Zulu warriors inflicted one of British Empire's worst ever colonial defeats. Over 1,000 British soldiers died that day. They were killed by the Zulu people. The British did eventually win the war, but only after sending massive reinforcement. The lesson is simple. South Africans fought. South Africans fought. In 1906, Chief Bambata Kamancinza led Bambata rebellion against colonial poll tax imposed on African men in Natal. Thousands joined him. The rebellion was brutally crushed. But even then, South Africans resisted because we are fighters. And then apartheid arrived. And many people speak as though apartheid simply happened and South Africans accepted it. No, that's not the case. South Africans fought apartheid for decades. In 1952, the Defiance Campaign saw thousands deliberately break apartheid laws through peaceful civil disobedience. They entered white-only facilities, ignored mass laws, and accepted imprisonment to expose the injustice of the system. In 1955, ordinary South Africans gathered their hopes into what became the Freedom Charter, declaring that South Africa belongs to all who live in it. That is our preamble in our constitution today. The same preamble that people use against us today. In 1956, approximately 20,000 women marched to the Union buildings in Pretoria against past laws. Their message became immortal. Wathinta bafazi, wathinta imbokodo. You strike a woman, you strike a rock. In 1960, police opened fire on peaceful protesters in Sharpeville. 69 people were killed. More than 180 were wounded. Did South Africans surrender? No. Surrendering is never an option to us. Resistance continued. The ANC and the PAC were eventually banned in the country. Many activists went underground. They went into exile. Some formed armed movements, and many were imprisoned, and many were tortured. Many disappeared forever. Many died. Many were murdered. But still, the resistance continued. South Africans resisted. Then came the 16th of June, 1976. School children in Soweto marched peacefully against the compulsory use of Afrikaans as a medium of instruction. Police responded with live ammunition against children. Against children. Images of Hector Peterson's body traveled all around the world. It was a tragedy. Hundreds of young people were killed during the uprising and its aftermath. Children killed. Teenagers killed. Yet, the resistance continued. The uprising spread across the country. The youth refused to be broken. Throughout the 1980s, resistance intensified. International sanctions grew, obviously. The apartheid government increasingly struggled to govern. They were feeling the pressure. South Africans made the country ungovernable because injustice had become unbearable and we were not going to stand it any longer. And then finally, in 1994, after centuries, 300 years of colonial conquest, of institutionalized apartheid, South Africans voted together in the country's first democratic election. And we finally achieved democracy. Now here's the part that people seem to misunderstand. South Africans did not descend into racial civil war in 1994. After centuries of oppression, there was no nationwide campaign to annihilate white South Africans or to unalive them. We chose reconciliation. We chose a constitutional democracy. We chose to try to build one country out of unimaginable pain. Does that mean every promise of democracy has been fulfilled? No. Many of us, myself included, is not happy with the democracy that we are in today. Many of us, myself included, are so disappointed in our governments and informal freedom fighters that sold out in 1994. Many of us understand that true restitution has not happened in South Africa yet. We understand that there is so much inequality in South Africa and that it needs to be fixed. We understand that the beneficiaries of our pain, over 300 years of pain, are still living their best lives in our country. We understand. But our restraint does not mean that we are cowards. Ubuntu does not mean that we are weak. Choosing law over revenge is not surrender. Believing in justice without destroying our country is not fear. We will not destroy our country to prove that we are brave to anyone. When someone tells me that South Africans are cowards, I think about Yinsa, I think about Manqoba, I think about Sandile, I think about Shaka Zulu, I think about Moshoeshoe, I think about all these people. I think about the woman who marched in 1956. I think about the children who died in Soweto. I think about the people who died at Sharpeville. I think about the political prisoners that spent decades behind bars. I think about the freedom fighters that died for us, the families who buried their loved ones and still kept on fighting. This is my inheritance. South Africa is my inheritance. This is the inheritance of millions of South Africans. So no, Don't tell us we are afraid. Never tell us we are cowards. You can never tell us that we accepted colonialism. We never rolled over. You can never tell us that. You can never tell us that we are afraid of white people. History does not support that claim. And I'm sick and tired of it. We resisted. We fought.